Namaste, dear friends, and I'm very happy to have you back on this course on Introduction to Indian Psychology. In the previous week, we were looking at the concepts of the mind in different traditions. So we started with the Vedas, the Vedanta, and then we looked at the Astika schools like Sankhya, Yoga, Nyaya, Vaisheshika, and Purva Mimamsa. And then we concluded with the understanding of mind in Bauddha and Jaina traditions. In today's lecture, we are going to be looking at the relationship between mind and the senses. Because what we discover is that in certain places, like especially in the Bauddha systems, they didn't understand the mind, or they didn't think that mind was conscious in itself. And it only became conscious when it came in contact with the senses. So this entire relationship between the mind, senses, the chit, and also the outputs, these are things that we need to understand a little more clearly. So what I will be doing today is I will start with a lecture where I will explain to you how I understand these concepts. Where do the gunas fit into this? What are the senses, the mind, and how we can then connect all of them to the outputs of our life. So this is something that I would like to share with you based on an overview of the way I have appreciated and understood it. So here's the lecture overview. We look at the Panchakosha and our vibratory nature, and then try and understand the Triguna through the quantum lens, its implications within and without, the integrated human system, basically the input, processor and output, and I'll explain that to you. And then the relationship between the sense objects or the Vishaya with the senses, the Indriya, with the Manas, the mind, and then you have the intellect, Buddhi, which then goes on to connect to the self or the Atman, the Purusha, Brahman, Sakshin, Drashtra, Jnatra. These are all almost synonymous terms. And then on the way out again through the Buddhi, Manas, and the expressions that we have through the threefold mode of thoughts, Manasa, speech, Vacha, and through the actions or Karmana or Kayena in certain contexts by the body. And then what are the recommended multi-layered paradigm shifts that are recommended by the Indian psychology, and as always with some exercises, glossary references and food for thought. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to try and share with you the way I have understood the concept of the Panchakosha when viewed through the quantum lens. Because when you see something through the quantum lens, you realize that everything is essentially vibrations. But because of the nature of the Panchakosha, the quality and density of the vibrations varies. And since it has to do with vibrations, we see that what essentially defines everything, all of creation, is nothing but the quality of vibrations, which in my understanding is what the three gunas represent. So I will try and depict them here for you, and I hope that you will also understand it like I have done. All right, so here we have the first idea is that we will, I'll show you three systems because of the three gunas. So we see that at the physical level, the vibration is of a very dense nature. No? This is not high intensity, it's dense nature. Then we have at the emotional level, it's a little less dense. At a mental level, it is a little less dense. And this much is the individual level. Okay. So what I would recognize this to be the aparardha. Aparardha. Or you can also call this the lower hemisphere. Or you can refer to this as the individual self with a small s. And the basis of functioning of this aparardha is generally ignorance. Whereas the other two layers, the Vijnana Maya, these belong to the cosmic dimension of the individual, and they are also connected to the context of the Ananda. Alright, so these are the upper levels. The Vijnana is a bit of the link principle, but it starts going into the upper realms. So this is your Parardha. or the upper hemisphere, or the self with a big S, and this part of our existence functions on the basis of knowledge, and Vijnana is the link principle of the supermind that Sri Aurobindo talks about. So this is one quality of vibratory pattern, all right, and I'll just call it A for now, and we also know which one it is in terms of the three gunas. So this is what corresponds to sattva, right, and we see that because this is of a cosmic nature, it goes across all, it is the same, because behind everything there is the same potential. But what is the third kind of a vibratory pattern, the most or the other extreme of this one, which is balanced and aligned? So it is the one which is completely very noisy, very entangled. And because it is so, we see immediately that it corresponds in terms of light to more of darkness, which therefore gives it its name, which is tamas. And if you have to think of what would be the physical condition of such an individual, we see that it's not very healthy. What about the emotional one? Again, it's very restless and not very much at peace. What about the mental one? We see that the mind must be very restless and again very distracted, unable to see things clearly, etc. What would be the breathing of a vibratory pattern like this? Tell me. Yes, as you've said, so it would be short, it would be irregular, it would be also shallow, etc. What about the breathing pattern of the people in Sattva? We see that because of the alignments, the breathing also is more regular. What is the physical condition? The physical condition has ease or good health. You see, the entire pattern here corresponds to some kind of an ease, whereas this pattern corresponds to dis-ease. All right. And what about the breathing of this individual? In Sattva, the individual, because of their breathing, would have greater alignments, and therefore the breathing would be deeper, more regular, etc. And what is the one in between? So the one in between, the Rajas, has a little bit of order, but also has a little bit of agitation in it. And so that is the Rajas part of it. All right. Now, another important dimension of this way of looking at the vibratory nature of the individuals, along with the three gunas, is that everything, as the Sankhya philosophy says, everything essentially has these qualities of the three gunas. In the first one, second one, or the third one, sattva, rajas, or tamas. But the other thing that is important to note is that this vibratory pattern is also happening in a lot of environment of vibrations. And the big question is, which one will influence which one? What is the tipping point of influence in this? So here we see, in the case of tamas, which one will influence? Will the tamas influence its outside environment, or will it influence the other way around? Now, if you look at it in terms of signals, we see automatically that it is the external that will exercise a greater influence. So someone who's already very confused, people can add to that confusion by going on giving 110 suggestions, and this person will get even more confused about what to do. On the other side also, because of the inherent confusion that they have, they are also going to end up confusing things around them. So this pattern is one that is influenced and will end up disrupting things in their environment. Also because the kind of thought we have, every thought we have is a frequency. So the quality and the nature of that frequency will amplify everything in its environment. So if an individual is in a complete mess, then their environment also will reflect more of that. Similarly, the more sorted the individual is, the more there is a chance that those frequencies will be amplified in their environment. So when we come to the sattvic vibratory pattern, we see that because of the nature of alignments, if you do this in terms of the signals, what happens? That when all the frequencies are aligned, then that individual becomes like a laser. And when that individual becomes like a laser, it is the individual who will influence the external environment much more than getting influenced by that. Okay, that's the very nature of a laser. And what more in this context? The moment the individual finds alignment within themselves, then they start resonating with the higher levels of vibrations as well. And therefore, we see in the Patanjali's Yoga Sutra where he says that when in yoga, because yoga is nothing more but finding these alignments and finding its connection with everything around it. So, when in yoga, tada drashtuhu swarupe avasthana, the seer consciousness, if I can put it as an inverted I, the seer consciousness is reflecting itself in the lower hemisphere without any distortions. In this case, whatever is coming through is highly distorted again, and that will influence the outputs. So, I hope you can understand what I see when I talk about the three gunas in this manner. Okay, and also the ease and the dis-ease, which system will get more of that. And in the rajas, we see that there are moments of clarities, but because of the agitation, again, there can be some kind of confusion, but there is a tendency also towards having some kind of a motivation, drive, but with a lot of other pranic movement happening in this individual. So, what is this integrated human system and quantum lens? So, now if we have to look at the entire relationship with the sense object, sense, the internal pattern and the outputs, I'd like to depict it in this following manner. So, if we look at the human being as a system, okay. So, in the system, we have input, processor and output. All right. Now, if you want to get the best kind of a product, imagine you have a factory line and you want to get the best product output. So, what are you going to focus on? Correct. We're going to focus on the inputs. So, what are the inputs and what are they corresponding to our being? So, the inputs that we receive are through our five senses. Okay. So, eyes, ears, nose, tongue and hand. All right. And what is the, I'll just do this one again. Okay, and what happens to each of these senses? They correspond. So, these are the indriya, but they also then correspond with the indriya vishaya. So, if I have to give you a indriya vishaya, let's say you've got a beautiful flower here, you've got musical notes here. So, this is the indriya vishaya here. And then you've got something to smell. So, let's say a cup of coffee. And then you've got the tongue. So, I normally like the ice cream. So, we've got an ice cream and then for the hand, let's say some snow. Okay. So, either snow or that's a snowflake or let's say fire. Alright, so there is a touch element here. So, now what do we see? If this is the Indriya Vishaya, Vishaya means the sense objects and this is the senses, sense or this is the objects, sense objects. This is the Indriya. What do we see? That these are coming into the system, but the system can be of three kinds. Either it can be of alignments, which means that there is a kind of a filter and this is the universal one on top. The last one will be, this will be act like a filter and you have the third one which is in between, which is the rajas. Okay, so this is the sattva, rajas and the tamas. These are the three qualities of vibrations through which we are capturing the world. Now, what happens in that case? Each of them acts like a filter. So, let's say if you have two telephone towers and you are getting a signal from one to the other, if there is a lot of movement and happening in between, what will have to happen to the signaling? Will it be clear? No, it will be distorted. So, when there is an input coming in from here, this particular one is going to distort it significantly. And then here we have the higher, the buddhi and the chitta or the buddhi and the higher Atman and the self which is looking at this. So, we said that we see things not because the mind is there, but mind only acts as a gateway between the senses and the higher consciousness. So the higher consciousness is what takes cognizance. But because of the muddled nature of, let's say, the tamas quality, the information is distorted, and what comes out also, even if there is a clear signal, will only come out distorted. And what are the outputs of the system typically? So we saw the outputs are through the thoughts, which is manasa, the speech, which is vacha, and through actions, which are karmana or kayena, through the body. Okay, so these are the three outputs that we have. Now, the question that I have for you is that if you want to get the best output, what do you need to focus on? Obviously, you need to start focusing on the input. We can't imagine that you're going to give a trash input and something great is going to come out in the output. So, therefore, there was always a great emphasis on what are our senses giving out to, because what the senses are giving out to is the first place of control on what is happening within, what is happening to the processor, as well as what is happening in the output. So, this ensure quality, premium quality here of whatever is coming in. Okay, so first this has to be looked after well. So, the input has to be of the top quality. But having said that, what we then need to work on is the management of the processor. And that really is again in our hands. How do we control and how do we calibrate the internal filters? That is what will play a very big role. Depending on all of this, so this is the second place where we have to preferably move towards sattva. So, there is a desirability, like I mentioned, within the Indian tradition of going from more noisy systems towards quieter ones, going from more darkened systems to more enlightened ones. And finally, also in the case of the tower, if there is more noise and more pranic movement, then the distortions will be greater. And once we have succeeded in finding those alignments, then there are greater chances that the outputs in terms of the thoughts, in terms of the speech, and in terms of the actions will be more aligned. Otherwise, we are in for trouble. So, this is how I would like to help you understand how this relationship is between the sense objects, the senses, the internal ambience, and the output of the system. So, it's up to each individual, and this is where karma, free will, and all lie, that it is ultimately in our hands to determine what is the kind of filtering that we will do. This filter acts on this side and the filter acts. So, it will take it in from here and it will decide what will happen in the output. Alright. So, I hope this is clear, and we can then see how the different concepts of the mind and all play out in this. This week is going to be dedicated to understanding this relationship in greater depth. And that is what we look at the gunas, we'll then look at the relationship of sense and mind in different systems and what has been recommended also. So, therefore, here we see that we have a shloka. This is from the Hitopadesha. It's a Subhashita, and the Hitopadesha has been written by Narayana Pandita. What does it say? It says, Manasyekam vachasyekam karmanyekam mahatmanam manasyanyat vachasyanyat karmanyanyat duratmanam. So, what does this mean? He says there is absolute unity in mind, speech, and actions of the great souls. There is complete disconnect between mind, speech, and actions of the wicked. Okay, one need not be so harsh, but basically what it implies is that those who have worked on themselves discover a certain alignment and integrity of being. So, what they think is what they say is what they do, and the very nature of human behavior and human outputs are such that the more one practices one of them, the more that gets reinforced even neurologically and becomes a default mechanism of action. Therefore, once upon a time in several societies across the country, there was a lot of emphasis on keeping one's word. This was a very important phenomenon. But in today's age of fake things, everything is getting diluted, and therefore the quality of the output and many other things, the reliability, etc., become all questionable. So the second part says that manasyanyat, vachasyanyat, karmanyanyat, duratmanam. It's not because that person necessarily wants to do it, but because there is a disjointedness within the system, that is what ends up happening as well. So all of us, according to Indian psychology, need to try and evolve from being more disintegrated beings to more integrated ones. So therefore, what are the recommended multi-layered paradigm shifts that have been recommended, which is like a kind of a divine alchemy? So the first is to go from asat, non-being or falsehood, to more truth. Again, truth being a integrator in terms of the developing of integrity within the individual. That would then lead to satya, and with a greater understanding of satya, there's a greater chance that the execution in rita will be in alignment with what has been conceived in the vision of the ideal for the individual. Then the second one is the tamaha. So from more darkness towards rajas, a little less darkened, all the way up to jyoti or light, and sattva, luminosity. In the third context, we have to move from asuri sampat. So we see that the emotions that we have are also going to impact the vibratory nature of the individual. So we move from asuri sampat towards daivi sampat. So the more aligned, luminous qualities of existence. Then go from involuntary reactions to voluntary responses. In the first case, whatever happens from outside is going to evoke a reaction, and that will only add to the confusion. But the more one develops the sakshi bhava, which is that you don't allow this input of the senses immediately to evoke a reaction. You see, in the previous slide, we had shown that when there is an input, if there is no control in the processor, then the immediate input will give an output, which is actually what behaviorism is talking about. But when we talk about humanism and with positive psychology, etc., if you have to try and make a link, we see that there is greater and greater emphasis on being able to hold, not just become reactive, but be able to respond from a position of stability and poise, which is the cultivation of the Sakshi Bhava within the individual. And we go from superficiality of being to the core of Indian psychology, which I consider to be the connecting to our real essence. So by connecting to our real essence, we are in a better position of authenticity and acting in a manner that is true to our swadharma. Therefore, we move from the smaller self to the greater self, from the actions of ahankara to the actions of the Atman, and being led by the psychic being, which is the first kind of transformation that Sri Aurobindo talks of in the Integral Yoga. And when we are able to do that, gradually we move from death situations to greater amrita or immortality. Now, this death can happen on various levels. It can happen at a physical level, which is finally what really takes place. But even at an emotional level, there are certain deaths that take place, when we are not able to handle, there's no light in the emotions. Similarly, at a mental level. So how do we understand all of that and try and rework them in order to move towards the greater well-being of ourselves? So the final one is to try and go from undivine life patterns, which is more of the materialistic ones. Why materialistic? Because our being is being driven by the horses, by the external senses that are pulling us in all directions towards a greater life divine, which is about the true enjoyment and mastery of material life and not its slave. So, when we are moving towards this life divine, it is not about rejection of matter, it's not about rejection of the Indriya Vishaya, but the way in which one engages with the Indriya Vishaya is not one of slavery, but one of mastery. So, we literally move from being a victim of circumstances to the master of these when we are able to engage with conscious exploration of the relationship of sense object, sense, manas, the higher faculties of buddhi and the Atman, and then in its outputs towards thoughts, actions and speech. So how do we make this entire mechanism of the integrated being or the integrated human system a more cohesive one? This was the central quest of the Vedic rishis and for anyone who is working on ways to find greater integrity and alignment with themselves. So what is an exercise here? Become conscious of your external and internal senses to awaken them. So I'd like to start by asking you to close your eyes and try and become acutely conscious of each of your senses. So close your eyes and see whether you can open up your hearing to things that are far away and see what is it doing to you. When you hear a sound, is it immediately evoking a response and causing a flutter, or whether you can just identify sound as sound initially? And then you can try to understand it more specifically. But just if you can reduce the noise around that experience and just call it sound. Similarly, you do it with your smell if there is an occasion, you do it with your touch, you become more sensitive about the interfaces of your body with different touch surfaces. Then I'd invite you to close your eyes and we'll try and hone our internal senses. So, for example, if you close your eyes and visualize a flame in the place of your inner eye or the third eye, visualize a flame, see how clearly you can see it. And then see if you can feel the heat. And put your mind to try and make it burn steadily and brightly. All right. If you're able to do that, then you see if you can apply that to different senses. So what are the inner hearings? What are the inner seeings? What are the inner smellings? What are the inner tasting and the touch? So repeat this with every sense. Some glossary for you. References. Food for thought. So I thought we can introduce you, and in fact this was an idea by Dibyenduda, who's helping in the entire editing process. So he was saying, why not try and also look at ideas from different regional languages as well. So I found this Tirukural from Tiruvalluvar. So I'll try saying this, but please excuse me if there are some pronunciation deviations. So, Vorumayul Amaipol Antadakkal Atrin Yelumayum Imo Puttayittu. Okay, so what does it say? It says if one can perfectly control the five senses in a single lifetime, just as a tortoise withdraws its limbs within its shell, that discipline will act as an indestructible safeguard for 7 lifetimes. Very, very interesting. And we have a similar idea in the Bhagavad Gita, which says that Yada samharate chayam kurmongani va sarvashaha indriyan indriyarthebhyaha tasya prajna pratisthita. So who draws away the senses from the objects of sense? As the tortoise draws in his limbs into the shell, his intelligence sits firmly founded in wisdom. All right. So try and become more conscious of the relationship of your senses with its sense objects, and be careful of the inputs, because that is going to play a big role in determining what happens to the processor as well as the outputs. So my dear friends, I sincerely hope that this explanation has helped you get a little more practical understanding of what these three gunas are all about and why these three gunas are essential for everything that is there in creation. And our next session is going to really deal with the application of three gunas in the different dimensions of our lives. So until then, please do the observations of your senses, sense objects, mind and the outputs. All the best. Namaste.